Welcome to What the Frac.
We are your fractional team, and today we break down marketing trends, strategies, and tactics in 30 minutes or less so that you can do the fun stuff like be creative.
Hi, Tara.
Nicole, I have a question for you.
Oh, okay.
Do you feel like you have built the most amazing community around you to like fulfill all of your needs and desires that you need for building a business?
I mean, I feel like it's one of the things that I'm really good at, which is like talking to people, getting my community together, having all the people who know different pieces. But it is something that I feel like a lot of people don't understand how that works into entrepreneurship. And I also feel like as a business owner, I get really stuck in like, I don't know, like pigeonholing myself in my own office behind my computer and forgetting that there is a community of people out there and that I can't do it myself. So I would say yes and no to that question.
So, I feel like you are probably not alone. And so I am thrilled about today's conversation because I have asked one of my dear friends to come on and talk with us about orchestrated connecting. And this is something that he has come up with. I am actually a part of his community. And he is coming out with a book on the whole methodology and how he's built and leveraged a community of leaders around the world that are not only a great community and like a great people to network with, but the way that he does it is so special. This community offers and asks and gives and receives. And it is amazing the methodology and the values that he's created. So I invited David Homan to come on and explain to us how he's built his community, how he leverages a network to create impact, and how we can do it. And so before he joins us, let me just give you a little background on David. So David Homan is the founder and CEO of Orchestrated Connecting, a global community of connectors, orchestrated opportunities, and impact-focused advisory firm, and Soore Connect, a startup focused on the strength of authentic relationships. He hosts a podcast called Orchestrated Relationships. There's a theme here. You're seeing it.
I see a little bit of it.
Where he talks on developing relationship values, and he's actually a classical composer as well. I mean, of course. And so from the middle class beginnings, he is the son of a college professor and the son of a nonprofit focused mother. He has built a network reaching into the most private and incredible circles globally while maintaining a code of purposeful community building called Orchestrating Connections. And that is what we are going to dig into. So Nicole.
This is so important, Tamara, because I think that we as business owners, we forget that community is such a big thing, but also I love how you mentioned authentic community. And I think that networking is not always authentic. So I'm so excited. I'm going to add David here to our conversation and let's get this started. Hi, David.
Hello there. Thank you guys for having me.
David, I'm
Thanks
so
for joining
excited
us
to have you on because your work has actually been really impactful in my life. And so that's why we want to, share things that help us as founders, as impact leaders, so that other people can, gain this insight. So you have a whole methodology around connecting. Can you explain just the basics of orchestrated connecting and this value-based, relationship-based connecting methodology?
Of course. So what I'll say first is, right, when you said authentic connection, authentic community, people can use those words all the time. In my world, you've backed it up by a positive action or you're inauthentic. We live in a world of platitudes, of people who can say what they've done, who they're around. A lot of my work and my writing is identifying the connectors, identifying even more than that, the takers. And every part of that is trying to understand who should you put your time towards and with, and who should you not. So the entire design of my community is essentially a very sophisticated no a-holes policy. I started with a code, and that was a code that's not changed for 10 years, which is to be in my network, you have to be an action-oriented natural giver that I or somebody else would leave my children with. I could unpack each part of that, but in the end, if you get it, you get it. And if you don't, you probably don't want to talk about it or listen to anything about my community.
Yeah, but I mean, what's interesting, because you mentioned that, and it sounds like it's this really strict rules, and there are, because there's more. David didn't even mention, like, you have to follow up. If someone makes an introduction, you need to follow up within 24 hours. You need to make sure that, David, you're going to explain this better than I am, that the chain of the impact is respected. And all of that, doing that, then it comes back to the community of, this is a community you can trust. This is a community that when someone says they're going to do something, you actually know that they're going to do it. You can trust that they're going to do it. It's unlike any other community that I'm a part of. And setting that foundation is what's made it so impactful. But David, how did you come up with that methodology and to find out that it worked? How did you test it? How did you grow it? Because now you're at how many thousand members globally?
About 2,154, I think, as of today. It keeps growing. Wow. About 150 to 300 people a year.
Nice.
So how did you discover that this methodology worked? And I want to go towards how do people start putting this into their lives?
Sure. So there's several things to understand at once, which is you have to have a rule system that has inherent risk to it, because people will always act selfishly. And if you can get them to act selfishly and selflessly at the same time, then you have a real system that is honorable. So in my network, I want you to gloat about all the success you have by expressing thank you and gratitude to everyone who's been part of it. I want you to build community by increasing your reputation and the reputation of others by demonstrating what that support was. And I want to give you permission, if somebody is not acting in a manner that you see fits the values of your community, or in this case, mine, to feel you have the permission to say it. I followed up with this person 3 times. They've canceled 4 meetings now on me, 3 in person. And the first one, what do I do? For which that is something I need to encourage accountability on. And everyone who knows, if you miss a bunch of meetings on my network and don't say why, you don't have to go into the personal issues of it. But unless you say why, this isn't the network for you. Communities forget risk is inherent, because without it, it's just something you can pay to be in or show up to. Mm-hmm. So when you take that, right, to unpack the negative actions as something that then you want to encourage a positive action from, if you build a framework where everyone is recognized and given to more because of how much they give, you create a virtuous cycle. And when you elevate people to see that by being better than themselves or how they show up normally, that they will get more from it, you create that cycle of people wanting to spend more time because their time is more valued because of it.
Yeah, I think it's such an integral part of community that we forget, right? I think as we've become more into the digital marketing space and away from some of the traditional stuff, or maybe in person, especially with COVID and all of that, we have seen this swing towards virtual communities, this swing towards trying to connect with people on a space. And what I've seen with clients is every one of them who wants to start a community, they always hit this wall of well, people are on there, but they're not participating, or they're not, how do I get more people to participate? And I think you have to go back to this really basic psychological principle, which is, how do you build connection with people? Mm-hmm. And I was just talking with someone the other day. I was helping them build a keynote speech. And I think people always talk, especially in the world of social media, right? What do I have? What have I succeeded at? Proving to you that I know what I'm talking about. But really, when you build connection, it's about shared vulnerability. It's about shared trust, right? So psychologically, if you share something vulnerable about yourself, people will connect and they will feel comfortable sharing some vulnerability about them, right? It's the same thing with the trust that you're saying. If you prove that you show up for other people when you need it, they will show up for you, right? And so I think that this is a really, I don't want to call it basic, but it's a basic principle that we forget about in this digital age. And so I love that you're including it in your community. How have you seen these principles kind of change people's either perspective or change their businesses or their growth? How have you seen it impact them?
So the fact you talk about that with such knowledge gives me great certainty to say you can skip the vulnerability chapter in my book and just move on to the others. Nothing that I've ever talked about is that groundbreaking. We should value relationships and the power of introductions. That the principles that my co-author Noah Askin and I go through in the book, I mean, they're diversity, curiosity, vulnerability, generosity, and gratitude. None of those are novel in their own, but try to retain all five in one interaction with somebody. That's incredibly hard. And so when you can create the right circumstances by which people are able to get what they need and to trust that somebody else might help them, but maybe not the person they are helping, that's when you differentiate a community from a network and an interaction from being transactional to being relational. And the more times you do that by being able to say what you need as well, which is one of the biggest sticking points most people have, right? A lot of business owners will want something to help them when they need it, and they'll fail to have helped all the people that could have helped them months before when they didn't have that ask. We tend to approach people, right? Like, let's have a catch up. Great to see you for coffee. By the way, will you do this thing for me? Mm-hmm. And we forget that if we simply build the relationship first, and we can do this strategically, then when an ask happens, a transaction might occur, but it's still relational at the core. We've lost that because we think keeping in touch or catching up is an opportunity to put our foot back in the door. We don't realize the door is always open if we build trust first.
Yeah. Tamara, have you ever, I'm sure you've been to conferences and networking events where like the first thing they say is like, introduce yourself and what's your ask, right? And I think that we like always, it's kind of like even with hiring marketing teams, right? They hire them when they need more sales versus let's hire it with the strategic thinking of like, eventually I'm going to need sales. So let's put the foundation in place. And so I love what you're saying, David. Sorry, I think I cut you off, Tamara.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, I think one of the things that I learned in my life, and it was a hard lesson, is how important your network or your community is. And so if we differentiate, because we talked to a lot of business owners, if we differentiate, like there's a community that you want for your brand, which is a little bit different than the community that you need as a leader, right? And that community that you need as a leader are people around you that you can trust, that you can ask. And then, like you said, David, you need to give back. You need to be someone who's trusted, someone who's there for them as well. And what I didn't learn soon enough was how to curate that around me, right? Like I learned that in my 30s. If I learned that in my 20s, that would have been so much more helpful. So what advice do you have for people who are stepping into this or know that they need to get way better at it? Because it's basic principles, but I actually don't think that it's as intuitive to everyone as it is to people who are connectors.
100%. It's not intuitive to most people. We do this on instinct. Connectors tend to see the world differently. They tend to see in between people and systems to hear what people aren't asking for. Mm-hmm. But it's incredibly hard to build those deep listening skills. So easiest thing, and I'll sort of unpack this a little bit. I took on instinct from talking to thousands of people all the time that about 30 to 40% of them were ever curious about me when I met them. Mm-hmm. Then we did the research. Turns out 2 professors with expertise on curiosity, it's around 34%. Being out of every 10 people you speak to, say at a conference, 3 or 4 might ask you a single question back, even when you're vulnerable with them. Think about how much time you waste talking to those other 7. So how do you filter it out? How do you build the skill set? The thing you have to realize is, and this is a thing especially to address the people who are just beginning with this, or people that are old hands but are finding that it hasn't worked the way they needed it to. When you grow up, you don't really have a choice of who's around you. That's your family unit, the friends in your class. When you finish high school, should you do so, and then go to college or start your first job, you're really around the people that chose to be in that same environment. But after your early 20s, everyone who you choose to have around you, they're your choice to have. It's that simple. You can work with somebody. You don't need to bring them into your circle. You can have a friend from high school that's a downer and bringing you down every time you see them. That's your choice. Doesn't mean you have to cut people out of your life, but the people who you want to be purposeful around you, once you realize there's no one to blame for those people's actions towards you or around you but yourself, you can finally take that self of responsibility that if you curate the closest people to you in your life, then you will benefit from as opposed to have the detriment of having them around you. That was an awakening that happened for me in my mid-30s. I'm now very intentional with it. I try not to meet people who are going to drag away from my life. It's why I built a code as I tried to scale something that's now global. But everything I learned from it was not everyone's going to like you. Not everyone's going to be like you. Almost everyone like that is going to trigger that person you used to be in middle school you no longer are. So therefore, you have to be unapologetically clear on what you want and what you can give. And the people that are going to respond are going to have that same spark and other people aren't. The same way for how many people watched Modern Family on this planet? Millions watched Meet the Goldbergs right before it and never turned on Modern Family after. There are so many different types of people where there's no one circle, but you only find your purposeful community when you look at them no longer as a tribe of people who look like you, talk like you, and do the same things as you, but instead of people that share the same passions.
So there's so much to unpack. I'm like, as you're speaking, I'm like, yes, have so many things. But the one thing I want to kind of bring this to is that what you just said there is not only so important to building your community, right? We've all heard the statement, like you are the average of the 5 people you put around you, right? Like things like that. But also what's so amazing about what you said is it's such a foundational instinct that I think needs to be practiced more. But as business owners, right, we talk a lot about like buyer personas and like who you're selling your product to and whether or not you should jump on trends and whether or not a trend's going to really fit with your core values. And everything you just said about community actually translates into how do you sell your product? Your product is not going to be for everyone, right? You need to know what your values are, who the people in your community are, who are the people you're speaking to, and make sure that what you're not wasting your time on the 7 people who are not going to find value in what you're doing or not going to find value in your product. And I think that from a community standpoint, but also from a marketing and business and selling standpoint, what you said is so foundational. I'm curious, what are some like simple ways that someone could practice this skill? Because I really truly believe that we as a society have made entrepreneurship this thing that like you're either born with or you're not. Whereas these skills you're talking about, leadership, connecting, being vulnerable, being able to listen actively, they're skills you have to practice. They're skills you have to learn the same way as if you are an athlete trying to make it to the Olympics, right? So what are ways that we can start training ourselves to think in these ways and to see the signs intuitively?
So let me give you an analogy for that, or 2 of the same. Think about that time if you did karaoke and you thought you did great, then you watch a video of yourself. Who's happy then? Or that person that thought they could be on that show Wipeout or any of those shows, like a key athlete, and they judge everyone who can't do it, then they run and they fall. Right? Like, we live in a world where we don't actually want the feedback. We want the vision of who we think we can be. I've learned nothing from doing things right. I've only learned by doing them wrong and soliciting feedback. So you want to know how people succeed in entrepreneurship? You could read every book. You could take every course. In the end, those people are teaching it. The people who are doing it, befriend them. You want to know the best way to have the best sales on the planet? Don't focus on those 3 people who are the right customers. Focus on the one person who knows all the right customers, and by building trust with them, you have the node that you need. Want to understand how you can get greater at these skills? Figure out the people who don't echo you. Figure out the people that actually are going to say, as many did to me, David, the way you've built your network, it comes across as really harsh when you say you will kick people out if they don't honor this role. And I heard that repeatedly. I actually did nothing about it because I knew I was right about it. And it turned out that I was, which was, if you're not going to be honorable in my network, you've chosen to be dishonorable. And that was a line I drew in the sand, but I listened to almost everything else about how I convened, how I spoke about this, what resonated and what didn't. What I thought would have been the star chapter of my book, which was the infamous chapter 5, which is now gone, which was me taking my world as a composer and translating every musical term into business terminology, how the timbre of somebody's voice and the speed of their tone and the resonance. I thought this was going to be the best chapter, and we cut it because it didn't work, even though I thought being a composer connector with a book called Orchestrating Connection, that was going to be this is the first time I've really talked about it in any length, because I had to listen to the people who would describe me when I wasn't there. And unless I mastered that, I hadn't built my reputation right.
That's feedback. Listening to feedback and incorporating it is one of my favorite topics of all time, because I think it's the one thing that no one wants to do. It's the harshest thing. It's, it's the thing that you are most vulnerable with, but it is the thing that will make you great. If you are able to listen to feedback, sort through it, right? You don't take everybody's, just like you said, you don't take absolutely everything that everyone says and then, change your business, your model because of that. But you listen and you learn, you translate it, and you get better.
And would you help somebody who you listen to more? Would they help you? Because the minute you have a dialogue back and forth where people both feel heard, that they've grown together, that's how you build that trust. You ask for the advice on how to, sell your business better, how to grow, what type of person to hire. And then you go, thank you, and you just go do your own stuff. That's not building a relationship. You ask for the advice and then you take it and then you honor back how that advice was valuable. Next thing you know, the person goes, I got a new board member for you. They sold this company. I think there'll be a catalyst for you. And that intro is never coincidental. We just think of it as such because we look at these as isolated incidents, not part of a larger chain of community building with these type of practices.
Well, I think there's something too that's really important that I've learned recently is, people think that there's two different types, or there's so many different types of people, right? There's people who maybe ask too much. There's people who are really natural givers and receivers. And then there's people who don't ask. And what's interesting that I've learned recently, and I learned it about myself, doing several different kind of profiles and working with mentors, is if you don't ask, if you're working with people and you don't have an ask and you don't build that relationship and take advice, you're also missing out on something. You may think that, I don't want to bother someone, but there is part of a relationship where someone else wants to help you. And if you're not participating in that part of a relationship where it's like, well, what can I do for you? How can I help you as a mentor? Then you're also missing out in this key relationship building. So being stoic and not asking for help and not asking for guidance and feedback also is a detriment.
Let me just ask that a different way, right? For anyone listening, who's been in a long-term relationship?
I was just going to say the same thing, David.
Where the person could read your mind. The answer is no one.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing we forget. We want people to understand us. We don't understand the work it takes to be understood.
Yeah. And I think too, from just say we all go into this to have a little bit of fun, to enjoy our lives, right? Like we all go into entrepreneurship for freedom and all these reasons, right? And I think that community building is really intimidating for a lot of people. And what I would say the reason for it is because you're putting an expectation outside of what it's meant to be, right? So for instance, I have one of the first people I met when I moved to Arizona was this woman named Kathy Lynn Coletta, and she'll be super happy that I mentioned her name. But she is the ultimate connector. I've never met someone so amazing. You literally sit down with her just for coffee, and she'll by the time you get home, you'll have 10 people that she introduced you to, right? And what I really started to learn from watching her, even when we'd sit down for coffee just to catch up, right? Because I didn't have an ask, was that the feeling I got from being a part of those conversations, the relationship we built where she could literally come to me any day and I would drop anything for her because I know that there's a built relationship there. And so what I started to do when I went into these situations, these networking situations, instead of going in only when I needed something, I started going into these events and meeting people with the idea that I don't need anything. And how can I start a conversation and be curious, like you said? And then how do I be more like her, where I can start introducing people before time? What I found is that when I then went to these events, it became fun. It became easier for me to understand and be intuitive about someone else's intentions or their character, or all the things that make me want to say yes or no to them being part of my community. And then once that's built, then when you actually do have an ask, you're not going into it being like, oh, I got to find 10 people today who are going to say yes to this ask. You say, who's in my Rolodex? I'm going to be old now. Who's in my Rolodex that actually already can fulfill that ask, right? And I don't have to go through these events as just like, I'm going because I need something. And I think a lot of startup founders, they only go when they're ready to launch. They're ready to launch. They're launching tomorrow. We need people to join the platform. Now it's a hard sell, and that is not fun for anyone, no matter who you are, and you're not building relationship. I mean, is that kind of, am I getting this correctly?
Oh, you're totally getting it. It seems antithetical that you should spend your time on things that don't have an immediate result, except for you would never have anyone that you met instantly you would respond to that quickly. So there's this expectation because you want or desire something that somehow somebody's going to go, absolutely, I will help you today, even though you would not do that to somebody else.
And now, David, you had one of the events I went to, you said you tracked the connection time,
Yeah.
or the time to an actual outcome, from someone had an ask to got the outcome. And what was your findings on that?
So I'll be clear, this is for something substantial, right? So if you're running a business and then you get your biggest client, you're launching a startup and you get your anchor VC, whatever it might be. Not just you made a new friend, everything's hunky-dory, and thank God you networked for 6 minutes at an event. So that I have found often takes, on average, 2 to 5 years and 3 to 5 people in that chain to make it happen, which means it's not meeting somebody at that event and then for meeting somebody getting the outcome. It's building that relationship to build the next relationship. In some cases, somebody's a pass-through. They just introduce you to Linda, then Linda gets you to Gene, and Gene's the person. But each of that takes trust, reciprocity, and making sure that their value is clear for you and your value is clear for them. But if you were playing this game in terms of all the metrics of it, why wouldn't you spend more time on the things that are going to result in the best return? Because the thing I'll question everyone is, name one thing substantial in your life that didn't come from the power of an introduction. Here's the person you should meet. Here's the event you should be at. Here's where you should go study. You should come out to this dinner party, whatever it might be. When people think back on that, the answer is every part of it, except for that random occasion where somebody's finding themselves in Tibet and they meet somebody else and they suddenly build a company. With a few examples like that, most people come back and they go, it was that one moment when this person heard me and they said, you should talk to this other person. That is what we should invest our time in. The growth all comes from it.
And David, so the reason you've got so much information and data on this is because you are actually building out the tech on this now. You have taken all of your years of experience and you have started developing a platform that people can start to use. I don't know, very soon-ish.
Oh yeah, no, it's happening. From me to about 10 beta users to several hundred within a month or two. The idea of building Soore Connect, which stands for Strength of Authentic Relationships, was that all of our connection data should be private to us. No one else should own it. No one should have any visibility in it. But if we can then have that system help us master who we know, who they may know, not a first degree or a friend or a like, but an authenticity based on the patterns of how we connect. When we then connect authentically with others in a permission-based system, the world is ours to connect and match asks to each other, to look at people's reputations and their integrity and what they've done for other people we know, love, or trust, or that they know, love, or trust. And you can systematically filter in those that want to do good and filter out those that are less savory. But we live in a world where we can't diminish their reputation because ours is at risk by doing so.
Yeah. And I think this is something that, we see over and over again, that us as humans, evolutionarily, psychologically, we crave this type of authentic relationship. It goes back to, your neighbor. Hey, have you used a guy to, put a new roof on your house? Like trusting that neighbor has used someone that they trust, that they had a good experience with. It goes to like Angie's List, and even like the thought behind LinkedIn, whether or not it was executed the way that it should be, or it was, bastardized through iterations, whatever that looks like. That's what we're always kind of chasing. If you look at historically through some of these startups, humans are chasing that connection. And there's something that is so simple about what you're talking about with this authenticity, and without changing it from transactional to relationship, where it's like going back to the basics. And I think that one of the things I'll say is that when I'm listening to you, as a business owner, I can imagine a founder being like, this just feels like so much extra work, right? Like I have so much on my plate already. I think try not to make it so complicated, right? What we're talking about is not making it so complicated. What we're talking about is things like building that relationship. And then when that person invites you to interact with someone, go, fully engage, whether that's going to an event, whether that's, sitting down for coffee and giving your hour of time to really have a conversation versus a transaction. And it can be as simple as when you go to that event, taking a picture with every person that you meet and then sending them that picture afterwards and being like, hey, it was so wonderful to meet you. Here's a little tiny bit of value that's going to remind you of our relationship. Let's start a conversation, right? Because I think we've exchanged LinkedIn accounts and we exchange business cards and we say we're going to get together and we don't. And then there's no value of even a small olive branch to start that relationship. Do you have any other small, like, I don't know, I don't want to call them games, but small ways to start that relationship to make it less intimidating for people?
So is it okay if I counter one thing you said?
Yes, absolutely.
I hate when people take a photo of me to remind me I met them and then they never really followed up with me. I will look at every person in the eye and I will say, I've really enjoyed our conversation. I would like to spend more time connecting. Would you be willing to do so? And if that's not okay, that's fine. Let's not exchange information. And once I've explained what I do, if I followed up with them and then they don't follow up with me, I know what they're like and I don't need them.
Yeah.
Well, and so that intention gives me a much better ROI on the people that I meet. And I no longer connect cards from people that I felt obliged to be around. Selfie or not.
It's interesting because I want to just bring it back to the technology really quick, because I think that this, like, it's complicated. It it's funny how simple it should be, but yet it's not. That's why people don't master this. That's why there's super connectors. That's why there's communities that you go to, right? And so what I find fascinating about the technology that you're building, David, is it takes some of that work, and through AI and through machine learning, it shows you these things that we're talking about. It shows you value in your relationships, so that you know this is where I should spend time, this is where I shouldn't. If you are crunched for time, this is what helps you. This is what helps you see who you need to be talking to, who's going to be delivering value for you, and vice versa, what you're doing that's giving value.
So obviously you get this really correct being an advisory board member. So thank you for that plug. More than that, right? Like you got to think of this like two different ways, but I'm glad you read all the emails. So
I do. This is a
Mm-hmm.
problem that I see so many people having, and that is why I am such a believer in what this technology can do.
So time crunch, right? You want to spend time helping people, you don't have it, especially running a business in this context, right? So what if you could gain back 20, 25% of your week by the times you spend helping other people with an intro, investor to investor, portfolio company to another friend's company. Somebody needs a CMO, you recommend the one that used to work with you when you were smaller. If we got that time back by systematizing it, we also learn from it. And therefore, when we're connecting with people who have already mastered that of who they helped and who they chose not to, we gain more time to know who to spend more time with that's newer to us, but not new to somebody we know or trust. We just don't have the time to mention. So this for me is always the systems problem, right? You know, like the super connector you gave the shout out to in Arizona, like the fact I haven't met her when she's a super connector and I've run a super connector network for 10 years, that's the systems problem. That we're in each of these bubbles and ecosystems, not knowing how we can connect because we lack the technology to give us the efficiency of this, the authenticity of this, but then to actually measure and demonstrate the outcomes from it. Once people understand that those outcomes are what drives people to keep using it, then technology will change because we value it now based on likes and follows and responsiveness. You know, when we all go on vacation, we're also stoked because finally the emails stop coming at too high a volume. But then those few days after, when we're looking at what we have to respond to, we don't feel human anymore. We feel burdened to be responsive to people and things that are, the most part, not as purposeful as we need them to be. And so tech can't solve all of this, but if we understand our patterns, we can be better doing it. And if we're better at doing it, then we can actually grow better, both for the businesses that we're building and also the people we want to help. But right now it's completely overwhelming because we lack the technology to support us doing that.
Well, I am thrilled to have you on to learn more about connecting, because I think it's, like I said, it's something I wish I learned sooner. It's something that you have to practice, and there is something that you need to gain from others in order to learn how to be better about it. It's not just something that, you read a book. You need to be in practice. You need to do it. You need to understand it better. So how can people follow your work besides buying the book?
You know, I made everything about my life easy to Google. If you Google my name, my website, anything in the world orchestrated, my email's there. If you look slightly further, my cell phone's there. If you want to connect with purpose and intent. The one thing I've lost in this race to grow something is time, but I will always take the time for somebody who's authentically connected to me, asking me to help somebody they are authentically connected to. But this world, which is primarily on orchestratedconnecting.com, and now the book, the startup, I put it all out there because I want people to learn, not from me, but from what I've learned from so many incredible people I've been honored to have in my network. There's a skill in this that is the most underrated skill on the planet. And it plagues me every day that people don't see the value in the people who build the most trusted, authentic relationships into the worlds of power and prestige and access, and all of everyone else who doesn't want to spend that effort but wants the value from it. For me, this is the penultimate value, because that strength of an intro is what makes the world better. And the ripple effects from it are something that I think should be more and more profound with more and more people, because everyone can be a connector. We just have to choose to do the self work and then choose to insist the people around us do that same work to be better together.
Love it. I love all the amazing tips, all of the amazing pieces. That one of the things that Tamara and I wanted to make sure on this is that people left after hearing 30, 40, 50 minutes of content and knew how to take it and put it into place right now, the hour after they talked, they listened. And I think that you've given so many good tips that are just so actionable that they can go out tomorrow, today. They can go speak to someone at their local store or in a networking group, or just introduce someone that they know needs that introduction, and they can live all of the pieces that you're saying. So please go check out David. Please go check out his book, and the community. And if you guys are not part of our community, please subscribe today. We have our newsletter. We have our social. We are everywhere that you listen to podcasts, on YouTube, all of those pieces. We're bringing more and more experts on every week, so you can learn tips just like this. And that's basically it, Tamara.
See you next week.
See you next week.